basically trying to recreate scenes like in outer space and you know, planets and spaceships and you know, time travel, any kind of weird abstract scenes where you had to have, for example, you know, clouds or star fields. They essentially designed different techniques to do that. And we're not going to watch this whole thing because it's an hour and 37 minutes long. But Douglas Trumbull Masterclass is the title. Higher Learning is the title of this video. And he goes on to tell exactly how he made a lot of the effects in Hollywood. These are things that were, you know, done and nobody really understood how they were done, and they didn't know they were actually effect shots. Some of the shots he did looked so good that they looked like, you know, they were just from NASA footage or you know, from telescopes and whatnot. So but the video is really long, but it shows, for example, how he made this planet, and maybe we can watch a little bit of it, and hopefully YouTube won't shut us down this time.
Mechanical parts, whatever, and I'd go into London and find stuff in surplus stores, and started experimenting with various kinds of exposures and ways to look at different perspective with patterns and validate that we could in fact make a spherical image. And then I built this device we call the Jupiter machine. And I'm going to describe this, but basically this is this little slit again. Now it's much larger. There is a black axis here and a big bearing down under here, and there's a projector here and a projector here. This projector is projecting the bottom half of the slit. This projector is projecting the top.
Not again. All right, we'll change the quality.
Half of the slit.
There we go.
And the entire, I'm not allowed to use the word gizmo, but I have to say it, the device would rotate 360 degrees. Over here there's 8x10 still cameras with Ektachrome film in them, and it would take maybe 6 hours to make one exposure. So this thing is rotating very, very slowly. This room has to be completely blacked out. Nobody can go in there. I even had to have the electrical department dedicate one electrical line from one generator just to this room, because if anybody plugged their appliance in or turned on a light anywhere else on the stage, it would change the exposure, which would make my exposure uneven. So here's a little diagram of that thing. So you got your 8x10 camera looking at this thing. This slit has got a projector shining on the top half of it. This slit got a projector on the bottom half of it, and the whole gizmo or device rotates 360 degrees on a little motor here. And even to stabilize the smoothness of the motion, I had a little shaft that came down to these paddles that were made out of erector sets. And we had a vat. This was a 70mm film can filled with molasses or honey or something, I can't remember what it was, to just smooth out the motion. And so a projector would be like this, a lens, a slit inside the projector, a piece of rotating transparency artwork, condensing lenses, and a light, and a motor rotating this artwork. And then I had to design this painting, which would be one circular painting, and one half of it would represent the northern hemisphere of Jupiter, and the other half of the painting would represent the southern hemisphere of Jupiter. So I made this painting because I am an artist, and I was able to get my airbrush and my watercolors and my gouache, paint this on a piece of cardboard. So the painting is really in two halves. This represented the lower half of Jupiter, which was going to have the red spot, and the upper half of Jupiter, and then around the edge it's the same, because I was going to kind of feather those two together with a little bit of a blur right around the equator. So I took that painting, photographed it, split it in half. Lost that slide. So you get, these are some of my early exposure tests where I bumped the camera during each exposure, so there's a little different alignment. But anyway, you start seeing the painting is now scanned onto this hemispherical surface, and it results in Jupiter as one contiguous exposure. If you look at this very, very closely, you'll see these anomalous scan lines here, which are, in fact, slight changes in exposure from some variation in the generator or whatever. But once I airbrushed this and modified it for the animation camera, I could make it into a pretty successful Jupiter. Then I did another thing, which was that I painted the red spot as a circle, knowing that I could alter the scan and when the slit scans 180 degrees of the surface of Jupiter, the artwork was only moving about 90 degrees. So it's taking the art and stretching it about a 2-to-1 ratio, like an anamorphic lens, which gave it a kind of a sense of, I don't know, motion or dynamics, atmosphere or something. Anyway, this was very successful, and we used it in a lot of shots, which did not get into the movie. We had every conceivable orientation of Jupiter and its moons. The shooting ratio in 2001 was about 200 to 1. So for every shot you see, there's 199 more that you not. This is one of Jupiter's moons, which I did by, they were much smaller, but I had about a 1-foot diameter white plexiglass hemisphere that was my screen, and I projected on it with 2 slide projectors. And in the slide projectors, I had glass plate slides that I just painted right on the slides and get all this weird reticulated paint. So that's actually just blobs of paint that have dried on the slide, and I project them onto the surface and get the moon, and then I airbrush the terminator on the moon, and it starts looking pretty much like one of what Jupiter's moons actually turned out to look like.
So I'm going to stop it there. Douglas Trumbull, I mean, this video is really long, but some of the things he's done, you know, he had to figure all these things out on his own, using film cameras and, you know, rear screen projection. Just everything was hands-on. And before computers, you know, they didn't really have any other way to do things except that way. And the processes he had to use were so, what you would think are as to be complicated. So if you take a software program, there's a complicated number of steps to make a planet and light it and animate it. The same is true in the physical world, you know, where you had to take different materials and put them together and you know, experiment and see how things look first. And but anyway, it's really an inspiring talk. I did watch the whole thing. Some of the things that he came up with were used in amusement park rides, and he's still active in trying to get some of his technology out there in a digital sense. So wow, it really 240 frames per second. Yeah, he kind of mentions that in this talk too, about frame rates and things like that. But anyways, it's really a great talk. So if you guys want to watch it, it's on the channel is TIFF, and it's Douglas Trumbull. Masterclass Higher Learning is the name of the video. All right. I really wanted to show Shanks FX again. You know, it's like I want to click the play button and show you guys because it's a really cool video, but you guys gotta just take my word for it. If you've been on my Facebook fan page, I did post I think 1 or 2 videos of his on there, so you can watch from there if you want to. All right. What to show? What to show? Well, let's see. I've got a few videos left. This one here is something that I was thinking of Dan Metal Mad Cat in Argentina, because you know, a lot of materials and things are not so readily available in places like Argentina or maybe Brazil, you know, South America, those kind of places where in America we take advantage of a lot of this stuff we have here. You can just go to a metal shop and pretty much get anything you want. You can get any kind of tools, any kind of wire. Things like aluminum wire are actually hard to find in Argentina. So this video here is basically a guy that takes helping hands, and it's in 3 parts. But how much time do we have left? Well, 10 more minutes. We might go over time just a little bit here, just to kind of show you guys what this is about. Now, if you guys want to find this, the channel name is Allison Illustra. So ALISSON ILUSTRA. Allison Illustra, I guess is the way you pronounce it. Or the easy way is just put in DIY low cost stop motion armature part 1. And it's in 3 parts. And I think the second part is a bit shorter, so maybe what I'll do, well, I should probably show it from the beginning. It's also in 3D, I noticed. When I was scanning across here, you can see there's two images. Um, so let's just kind of show some of this for about 5 minutes here. I can't remember if there's actually audio playing with this. I don't hear anything, so there might not be. Oh, there we go. Okay. Alright, and it's royalty-free music, so hopefully YouTube won't shut me down. I don't know if there's any more music or not. But Ron Cole was mentioning that he used helping hand joints in his puppet called Trevor in his film called In the Fall of Gravity. And he said he put washers around the screws that he tightened up to make the plates more sturdy from the helping hand joints, because I was kind of wondering, maybe for these the plates are actually pretty soft, as Ron was saying, and they kind of bend when you tighten them down. So what could you do to prevent that? And so Ron's solution was washers. which would basically make the thickness, you know, maybe twice as thick or so, depending on the washer. But I was wondering if you could somehow heat treat those and make them harder somehow. You know, I'm not really sure what kind of metal they're using. But heat treating is, you know, I guess possible. Oh, they're cueing some more music. It seems to take them a long time to cue the music. Like long, awkward gaps. But anyway, let me just kind of zip forward here. You know, he shows, here's a little technique he uses to file the balls on the ends of the rods there, which I don't know the purpose why he was doing that, because he's not giving any commentary. It's just kind of, you just kind of gotta guess why. And it might be because they're sort of rough. That would be my guess. You know, the helping hands are definitely not the smoothest, most polished pieces you can buy. It seems like some of the balls are actually not even completely round. I've got a pair in the garage, but I can't even remember if there's like a flat spot on the end. Yeah, it seems like there's flat spots, but if you try to make it round, you really can't do it precisely, so you'd probably get a lot of popping. Yeah, the editing is not so great, but I was not such a great editor at one point myself, so I feel his pain, his editing pain. But here he is, he's piecing it together, and I'm not sure what was he using to attach those, I wonder. Okay, so what does he do here? I can't remember now. Now I have to watch because I'm curious. Okay, he's just measuring. Probably trying to find the center. You know, that's one of those things where I wouldn't even use a ruler. I'd just kind of eyeball it and get it really close. I mean, can't you guys? Are you guys able to eyeball stuff like that? And is it just me, or does it seem kind of weird to measure it when you got a big, thick magic marker and a very unprecise file? Not that I'm mocking him or anything, because it's cool he made this video, but okay. So he's making a flat spot to drill. Let me and then he does it again. Does it to all his pieces, and then okay, same thing, same thing. Okay. Okay, so he's making a groove to connect the pieces together. All right. And then okay. So that's basically it. I'm guessing this, he might be not very good at speaking English, which is why he's, okay. But anyway, it turns out pretty nice, you know, but the thing is like Ron was saying, and here's part 2, and then part 3, this is the final part. You can kind of see what the thing looks like. Okay, so here's the final puppet. And so you guys agree, yes, just eyeball it. Yeah. Same here. Okay, so Ron is kind of confirming that the balls are somewhat jagged and oval shaped, as opposed to being round, and also that he remembers an article on how to make these armatures in the 1980s with helping hands. Oh, come on now. I know you can play, video. I know you can play. Come on now. There we go. But honestly speaking, I think it turns out really good. I think that, you know, sandwich plates aside, the thought that was put into it, you know, it's really well made. And like I imagine, you know, this toe joint probably can't even hold up the entire weight of that armature. And I don't mean to speak poorly of Armaverse armature kits, but they had a similar issue when they were making sandwich plates out of aluminum. And one of my friends had a kit, and it was just really, it couldn't even hold up the weight of itself, it seemed like he would just add just a little bit of piece of clay on the head, and the ankles would just flop over. So you know, the materials you use are really important. But still, if you don't have anything, if you don't have access to an expensive armature kit, it's definitely worth trying. Now he's got lots of videos, some ZBrush modeling, and one of, I believe that's his dog. But the three parts are here. So again, Allison Illustra, ALISSON ILUSTRA is the channel, and DIY low-cost stop-motion armature is what you can search on YouTube to find it. Okay. Yes, my last event was terminated. So, anyway, how much time we have? I'm just going to go over a little bit of time here. I wanted to mention this earlier. Laika has actually announced a brand new feature film. And so this is something which came out December 22nd, 2014. So this is probably known to most of you guys out there already. But it's an interesting sounding film in that it doesn't sound like your typical film that would be made by Pixar or Disney. It sounds more like a Henry Selick film, actually, which, you know, I know Laika kind of has not, well, how can I put this? Laika and Henry Selick don't get along completely well, I've heard. There's a lot of political stuff that's happened when he was working on Coraline, and you know, and a lot of it has to do with the type of films that Henry Selick gets involved in, and they're more, you know, he's always taking chances with the topics, you know, like with the type of film he chooses. A lot of them are like sort of cross between Alice in Wonderland and like Frankenstein. You know, there's always some weird elements in there, and you know, a lot of people don't really consider those films. Like Monkey Bone is one example. You know, a lot of people don't consider those to be films that would be blockbusters, and that's actually a good thing. You know, that's actually a good thing. I think Henry Selick is a really brave filmmaker to do that. And I think there needs to be more people like that. I read that Interstellar right now is the only film out of all the films up for like Academy Awards that aren't rehashes of old films, and you know, like, you know, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man 5, and all these kind of like hero franchises and stuff. So it's just so rare that anybody allows people to have artistic freedom to create things that have never been seen before. So this one here, it sounds interesting in that Kubo and the Two Strings is what it's called. And let me just read it, because it's not a long article, but it's kind of interesting to hear about. So it says here, and who wrote this anyway? Amid Amidi. And that's how you say his name. He's been on Cartoon Brew forever. I still can't pronounce his name right. But anyway, Laika announced today its fourth feature film called Kubo and the Two Strings. The film will mark the directorial debut of animator Travis Knight, who is also the CEO of Laika and son of the studio's owner, Phil Knight. The studio has previously made Coraline, Paranorman, and this year The Box Trolls, which I never got to see yet, which I can't wait to see. But Based on an original screenplay by Mark Hames and Chris Butler, Paranorman, the film is set in mythical ancient Japan. It will be produced using the same mix of stop motion and CGI that was used on the studio's most recent film, The Box Trolls. Voice cast includes Matthew McConaughey, Charlize Theron, Rooney, blah, 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 blah. In the film, a humble boy from the village Kubo has his life disrupted when a spirit from the past tries to enforce an ancient vendetta. Kubo must avoid gods and monsters while he searches for a magical suit of armor once worn by his father, the greatest samurai of all time. The film, says Travis Knight, is a gripping yarn woven from Japanese folktales and mythology with lost civilizations, mystical origami, noble heroes, cross-starred lovers, and blood-curdling monsters. Continues Knight, and at once epic and intimate, Kubo is a funny, intense, and ultimately uplifting fairy tale draped in some of the most bizarre and exciting imagery I've ever seen. Most importantly, it's deeply moving. It's a story that means something, a story that deserves to be told. In short, it's a Laika movie, and with a poetic script, sublime cast, and our freakishly talented artists and craftspeople, Kubo will be a strange, stirring, and altogether stunning film. I can't wait to share it with the world, he says. So, you know, it sounds really good, but very different from a lot of films that you've seen out there, like Monsters Incorporated or Monsters University, and then Monsters this, Monsters that. It's not a rehash, you know, of anything. It's totally original. So I think it's going to be great. It's my kind of film, actually, but you know, we'll see. Time will tell. Okay, so Don Carlson, you said you had like a question about something on the show. If you want to ask me that, I can answer your question maybe. But okay, so well, it's going to take some time for my voice to transmit to the live stream. So we're going to watch this really quick 1-minute video. It's called Del Monte Zucchini Commercial from the late 50s and early 60s. And I thought it would be kind of funny to show this because stop motion has come such a long way quality-wise and fabrication-wise, that this kind of shows you guys the roots of stop motion before most of us were born. And these were the true pioneers of stop motion. I'm not even sure who made this, but I'm going to play it right now.
Del Monte Zucchini.
Oh.
Once upon a time, a little bambina named Red Riding Hood was take a basket of goodies to her sick grandmama. Good things to eat like Del Monte Zucchini. There's a wolf in the bush. And this wolf just loved Del Monte Zucchini. Those delicate little wedges of Italian squash simmered in rich, flavorful tomato sauce. Delicious. He runs ahead to Grandmama's house. Soon comes Red Riding Hood. Grandmama, she say, what a big nose you got.
Better to sniff that lovely Del Monte Zucchini, he say.
And Grandmama, what a big mouth, she say.
So I can eat lots of wonderful Del Monte Zucchini, he say.
With that, out pops Grandmama from a kitchen with a big steaming bowl of Del Monte Zucchini squash. They taste. They always say, Del Monte Zucchini, that's the last word in a vegetable.
So what do you guys think of that? Sort of funny in a way, but you know, it's actually pretty good, right? For being a 1950s animation. I mean, the style is different. It's not very polished, but it's something, you know. Well, I don't know. It's pretty good. So yeah, check out these puppets. So check out their eyes, right? So it looks like almost like they use paper or some kind of cutouts to animate. And Ron mentioned to me that thanks for the recommendation. And oh yeah, that's right. there's a guy in Iraq, in Baghdad, who sent me an email, and he goes, yeah, I'm interested in somebody making some puppets for him, and he is supposedly wanting to make a stop motion film, which would be the first of its kind in Iraq. So that's kind of cool. And but I don't, I'm so busy right now on other jobs, sculpting for people, that I was like, well, I can't make your puppets, but maybe Ron Cole could. So I sent him an email, and hopefully that'll get worked out. Now, Don Carlson says, I wanted to ask what you thought it would take to make clay animation viable again. Well, that's a tough one to answer. I think it would probably take. Well, I mean, it's still viable though. Like you would have to say it's not viable now to make it viable. Well, really, I don't think it's possible from a studio point of view, because even when Will Vinton was in the heyday of, at the height of clay animation. In fact, I had a documentary I was thinking of showing here on the history of Will Vinton by this guy called Electric Dragon 505, and it's a half-hour long, so we probably won't show it, but if you guys are interested, maybe you guys can watch it. I might try to watch it next week if YouTube doesn't get angry at me for doing that. But a lot of people at the studio were almost upset that Will Vinton was such a clay purist, because clay is very hard to work with, as you know. Like if you wanted to make a set, and you could take a large piece of styrofoam, cut it to shape, and throw some paint on it, or spend 2 weeks melting clay and mixing the colors of the clay and spreading it around on a piece of wood and then texturing it. That's a lot harder than just doing it with styrofoam or some other kind of material. So from what I understand, a lot of people didn't really care for Will Vinton's purist clay puppets and sets, and even the skies, and actually this little short film that Electric Dragon created goes into it, where even the clouds and whatnot in The Adventures of Mark Twain were clay painted. And so Will Vinton was just very adamant that it had to be clay. But nowadays, with computers, if you watch Paranorman, for example, and you have all these effects with swirling energy and mist and sort of paranormal elements, for example, would a studio today look at computers to do that, or would they go with clay? And from a financial standpoint, it's very hard to convince anybody to put money into, hiring Joan Gratz. I think it was Joan Gratz that did all those shots, and saying, well, hey, why don't we do it the hard way? It's considered the hard way right now. I mean, even two-dimensional animation is considered the hard way compared to 3D, which is, of course, a horrible way to look at it. Like, you're talking about a talented artist making something that people like to watch, and you can't really say that that is a bad thing. But when you're looking at it, we have so much time and we have so much money, it's so hard to convince people. So I think it's going to be someone like Don Carlson, for example. Like I made I'm working on Zombie Pirate Tales, and the puppets are mostly all clay, but even that, I had to use one puppet which has a foam body, just because he's got to fly around on a flying rig and do all kinds of different moves that aren't possible in clay, which actually they are, but I thought it would be a little bit easier with foam, so I used part clay, part foam. If you're too strict in trying to do things in clay, for example, or all in wood, or like George Powell. George Powell used to do everything in wood, so he'd make all these replacement puppets. Every puppet would have a different position, where like the walk cycle would be one set of positions, and then waving an arm would be another cycle of positions, and then so they'd break all the shots down and figure out what they had to make. And so they would have like this army of little wooden characters that took forever to carve. And then along comes Hua Chang, who said, well, why don't we try, instead of that, using wax? Because you can melt wax, you pour it in a mold, then you can modify it, and it doesn't take as long as wood takes to carve. So Don is saying here, or let me backtrack a bit on your chat. So Don is saying commercially, yeah, I think commercially that's the hardest thing. Will Vinton would be the guy to do it, right? Because he's already done it. He'd be the guy to pick up his own torch from his previous studio and try to do that. But then you got to look at it as in other terms, where most of the talented people are now into computers, and the new generation is also into computers, right? So you have the new generation that's growing up on pirated software, and they're making animations on Blender, and they're doing it that way. The talent that the generation before didn't have computers, so they have put all their time into building their talents in sculpting. So it's harder to find people that are good sculptors now. Ron Cole says, what will make claymation viable again, a hot selling product would be something cool that goes viral like a Pez film. That's true. And also he says, yes, clay animators need to become adaptive and accepting of using some rubber involved in the process, like Nick Park did. And I believe Nick Park, yeah, he used rubber like in Wrong Trousers. He used rubber there for the legs, and then of the walking trousers. And then he also used, I believe, like Sculpey or Fimo or some other kind of hard product for the torso of Wallace. So Don says, but if someone replaced the clay with something new and different that behaved like clay, but with improved properties, the old rules for clay don't apply because it's not the same stuff. It looks the same but behaves differently. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like I was just saying with Wallace and Gromit. Wallace has what looks like clay for an upper body torso, but it's painted hardened clay, or like they may even have used like an epoxy resin at some point for that. And you can't really tell because it never moves, and it has a very similar exterior look to it. So there's nothing wrong with that, really. And that was one of the things that people were frustrated at with Will Vinton Studios. And I think by the Easter special, it was the first time he used foam latex with Wiltshire Pig when he was in his Easter suit, if I recall. Ron Cole says, when he worked at Broadcast Art, virtually all their puppets were foam latex bodies and clay heads. Yeah. And Nick says, silicone bodies and Chicken Run was a good idea. Alright, well, anyway, guys, see if is my camera working? It works. So I am going to end the show. Maybe next week we'll show the history of Will Vinton from Electric Dragon 505. And anyway, hope you guys have a good new year. It's been fun chatting, and see you guys, I guess, next year. Wow, pretty weird to think of that. See y'all later.